Hello and welcome to Nice and Blunt. It's Friday, so it's time to get to my quarterback, tight end, and defense rankings, as well as give you 5 picks against the spread that I like the most this week. So there's no time to waste. Let's go. At quarterback, I really love Patrick Mahomes, number one this week, going up against Washington. And his defense has been really bad. They haven't been able to stop anybody. And this will be a game where I think they're going to give up 30 points as well as put up 40. So I really trust Patrick Mahomes to bring the Chiefs back up to 500 and win this game. So give me Patrick Mahomes at number 1 and Josh Allen at number 2. And this game against Tennessee is probably going to be another blowout for the Bills. I really don't think that the Titans have been able to stop anyone, and you know that they're not going to be able to stop Josh Allen. So obviously these two players are must starts, and I think Justin Herbert has just entered that category. This game against Lamar Jackson, who I have at number 4, is going to be must-watch TV, and I really think this will have an impact on the MVP conversation. I think the winner of this game is one of the top 3 frontrunners, and this is one of those games that people are going to look back to when making that decision. I've picked the Chargers to win this game. That's why I have Justin Herbert at number 3 over Lamar. But honestly, you're really splitting hairs here. I think both of them are going to be great options. All 4 of these guys, I think, will put up more than 30 fantasy points in week 6. So must starts for all 4 of them. And obviously, same goes for Kyler Murray. He's usually a top 3 option, but this matchup against Cleveland, it only is good because of last week against Justin Herbert. So obviously, Kyler Murray has that potential, but I think they're going to be a little bit better this week in this game because they don't have Nick Chubb, so they kind of need to rely on the defense a little bit more. And that's why Kyler Murray is a little bit lower than usual. I have him at number 5. You're obviously starting Kyler Murray. I think you're also going to start Matthew Stafford with confidence. It's unlikely you have one of those other 5 options, so he is a must-start quarterback for me this week at number 6, going up against the Giants, who have been a pretty bad defense against the pass and opposing quarterbacks. Just ask Taylor Heineke. I really like Matthew Stafford this week, and my only concern is that the game script goes away from the pass in the second half, but still, that only means that he would put up a lot of points in the first half. So I trust Matthew Stafford as a top 6 quarterback in week 6. I would have had Tom Brady at number 7, but obviously he played last night and he didn't hit 300 yards. He threw 2 touchdowns, but he also threw an interception. So not the best performance for Tom Brady. And at number 7 now is Aaron Rodgers at Chicago. I obviously trust the talent with Aaron Rodgers. He's always going to be a top 10 guy, basically. And this matchup isn't great, but he understands how to play Chicago, and the fact that this is a division game kind of nullifies the matchup concerns. So trust him at number 7. I also trust Dak Prescott, but I'm a little bit concerned about both of these players' upside this week. These games might not be competitive against these opponents, so they might rely heavily on the run game and limit the upside. But still, I trust these guys to always be in the top 10. My number 1 streaming quarterback this week, who is clearly a top 10 option in my opinion in week 6, is Taylor Heineke versus Kansas City. I mentioned Patrick Mahomes at the top, and I think this is going to be a shootout. But the points from Washington are going to come in garbage time mostly. So I think they're going to go over 30, and Taylor Heineke is going to put up a lot of fantasy points. But obviously, it is still Washington at the end of the day. So I can only rank him as high as 9, but I feel so confident in him. He is a must-start in week 6 if you are looking for a streaming option. Ideally, you're not facing him because he's one guy who could vault into the top 5 if things go right. At number 10, I have Joe Burrow, but it would have been Jalen Hurts, who played last night as well. But I like this matchup for Joe Burrow, even though the Detroit Lions are much more vulnerable against the run than the pass. I think Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase are going to connect for another long touchdown, and I think he's going to get T. Higgins involved again. So I trust him as a top 12 guy in week 6. At number 11, I have Daniel Jones, and as long as he plays, he's been practicing, but I don't think he's fully cleared from the concussion protocol. I could be wrong about that. But he's been very reliable for fantasy this season, and he hasn't been turning the ball over. So the only cornerback that scares you is Jalen Ramsey so far for this team, and otherwise they've been pretty average coverage in the secondary. So I think Daniel Jones will be just fine and still pay off as a top 15 play. With several players on bye this week, he's a pretty reliable option as long as he suits up. At number 12, I got Sam Darnold versus Minnesota, and this matchup is a slight downgrade, but I'm not that worried about it ultimately. And as long as Christian McCaffrey plays, I think he definitely pays off this ranking. If that doesn't happen, it's a little bit more risky, but I still prefer him over Kirk Cousins in this game. And I think both of them have a pretty solid floor inside the top 15. So that's why I have them at 12 and 13, Sam Darnold and Kirk Cousins. And then at number 14, I have Derek Carr at Denver. And this is kind of just a gut feeling because I do believe in Derek Carr. With all the turmoil in Las Vegas at the moment, for this one game, I think they're all going to be motivated to really get their act together, and they're going to come out very aggressive. And I think the first half of this game is going to be really good for Derek Carr. I think in the second half it calms down, and it may be a very close game at the end of it, but I think Derek Carr is going to pay off as a reliable top 15 quarterback this week. I trust him despite the fact that John Gruden isn't there. If anything, that makes me more confident in Derek Carr the rest of season, because obviously you can't trust John Gruden's decision making. At number 15, Teddy Bridgewater versus Las Vegas in the same game, and I think this is going to be a close one at the end of it, and I think Bridgewater is going to compete. But I'm a little bit concerned that, he just doesn't have the most upside. He doesn't throw interceptions, so he's a pretty high floor player. But if he doesn't throw touchdowns, if they go to the running backs, then he's not going to pay off at this ranking. So there is some risk, but at the end of the day, a high floor for Teddy Bridgewater. Baker Mayfield at number 16, who is really going to need to show up in this game against the Cardinals without Nick Chubb. They're not going to be able to rely on the ground game as much. Obviously, Kareem Hunt is still a great option, but you can't underestimate the value that Nick Chubb provides to this offense. So I'm a little bit worried about Baker Mayfield because through the first 5 games, this hasn't been the best matchup for opposing quarterbacks. So I only have him at number 16, and this is going to be a bit of a prove-it game for Baker Mayfield. I don't know if they win this game. I picked them to win in my matchups, and I really want to take that back because Nick Chubb is not starting. But at the end of the day, I'm going to stick with what I put down in that video, and I'm taking the Cleveland Browns at home over the Cardinals, but I don't feel good about it at all, and I don't really trust Baker Mayfield. At number 17, I got Trevor Lawrence versus Miami, and this is a pretty good matchup, but when you look closer at the stats, I don't think it is, to be honest with you, but they gave up a massive stat line to Tom Brady last week with 400 yards and 5 touchdowns, so I don't think that Trevor Lawrence is going to be able to do what Tom Brady did, and that's why I still don't fully believe in Trevor Lawrence, but he's the rookie quarterback I'm most confident in this week, and if there's any game for Trevor Lawrence to show up, it's probably while you're sleeping at 6:30 in the morning. So Trevor Lawrence is my number 17 quarterback this week, and it's mainly because there's 4 guys on bye, and then Tom Brady, Jalen Hurts have been taken out of the equation, and same goes for Russell Wilson. So that's why he's at number 17, but I'm not that confident at this point. I think you are getting a bit desperate at this point. But this is kind of a desperate week, so no judgment if you start these guys. Carson Wentz versus Houston, if you're desperate in a 2-quarterback league, is interesting. Same goes for Ben Roethlisberger versus Seattle. This defense is not very good, so the primetime matchup bodes well, but I'm just not convinced that Roethlisberger has it anymore. And then Davis Mills actually has a really good matchup, but it's kind of skewed by the stats from Lamar Jackson last week. So it's still very tough to trust Davis Mills, but I have him at number 20 at the moment, above Mac Jones, Jared Goff, Ryan Tannehill, Geno Smith, Jacoby Brissett, and Justin Fields. Those are the guys I don't think you can start. And obviously, Trey Lance, Jameis Winston, Zach Wilson, and Matt Ryan are on bye, so you can't start them either. That's why this week at quarterback is kind of thin. It's kind of not really affected very much at tight end. The only 2 players missing are George Kittle, who was already on IR, and Kyle Pitts, who you're really counting on. So Logan Thomas is also on IR, and Rob Gronkowski is out. So they are not a factor. And at number 1, obviously, it's going to be Travis Kelce at Washington. That hit looked pretty bad at the end of the game, tapped out for the game and just watched on the sideline. They weren't going to win at that point. I don't blame him, but it didn't look good. It was right to the head. But you still trust Travis Kelce at the end of the day. And number 2, I actually have Mark Andrews versus the Chargers, who have been pretty susceptible to tight ends. At this point, I can start to kind of take the stats against tight ends into account. And at least the teams who have been very bad against tight ends, because those are the ones that you can find a common denominator. It is the defense. So this is a great matchup for Mark Andrews, and we saw the potential last week with not only 2 touchdowns, but 2 2-point conversions. So I like him a little bit more than Darren Waller at the moment. I think there's just more scoring upside because the target tree in Baltimore is even more narrow than it is in Las Vegas, and Lamar Jackson has been an MVP caliber player. I can't say that for Derek Carr. So that's why Darren Waller is my number 3 tight end. He moves a tick down the rankings, but still you trust him. A very reliable floor for Darren Waller. He will continue to score and be a good option. I'm not worried about him. And number 4 is TJ Hawkinson versus Cincinnati. And you trust the role for TJ, and at some point the garbage time obviously is a factor. So I think he is still a reliable top 5 option, but sometimes he is kind of missing, and I think that injury is playing a factor. So a little bit concerned with TJ, but still going to trust the volume another week. Let's see if he can get it done as a top 5 play. And if he doesn't, then I think Dalton Schultz will overtake him because he's been so consistent from the target standpoint. The only game he didn't get 6 or more targets was that really low time of possession game against the Chargers. So that one was kind of fluky. And otherwise, he's been catching 6 passes every game, putting up quite a lot of yards. And I really trust his connection with Dak Prescott. So I have him as a top 5 play, even though this matchup is technically bad against New England when you look at it in the matchup section. When you look closer, they haven't really faced a real tight end. And that week against Tampa, Gronk wasn't playing, so that doesn't really count. But they did give up a touchdown last week to the Houston tight end. So I think Dalton Schultz will be just fine, and I'm not worried about it. They're going to focus more on Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb. So I trust Dalton Schultz at number 5. And at number 6, I also trust Dawson Knox. He's getting a touchdown in basically every game at this point. And against Tennessee, I think, again, the Bills are going to put up more than 30 points, at least 4 touchdowns in this game. So Dawson Knox is a very appealing target in the red zone to get one of those touchdowns. I trust him as a top 10 play. And because of the scoring potential, I have him at number 6 this week. Dawson Knox is a must-start tight end. At number 7, I also trust Mike Gesicki, and the volume has been there for Mike Gesicki, but he does come off the field a little bit more than you would like. But I do like this matchup. Jacksonville has been giving up quite a lot of touchdowns to tight ends, and they haven't necessarily faced ones that you expect to show up. Like CJ Uzoma, for instance, had 2 touchdowns against them. So I like Mike Gesicki a lot this week. He's definitely a top 10 play. And I really trust him as such the rest of season. I really trust the workload. But when Tua comes back, we're going to have to monitor the situation. But that hasn't happened yet, so Gesicki's still number 7. At number 8 is Jared Cook going up against Baltimore on the road, and Baltimore has also been giving up quite a few touchdowns to tight ends as well. They gave up one to Mo Alley Cox last week, and this is looking like a good matchup for Jared Cook. The strength of Baltimore's secondary is the corners going up against those wide receivers, so I like Jared Cook to slip past the defense and probably score a touchdown in this game. He's a top 10 option for me. At number 9 is Tyler Higbee at the New York Giants. And they've also been giving up a lot of touchdowns to tight ends, pretty much one every single game at least. And I think there's going to be some good odds that Tyler Higbee scores and also probably gets about 50 yards receiving. I really like the floor for Tyler Higbee, but at the end of the day, like all of these tight ends at this point, they are very touchdown dependent. So I like him inside the top 10. At number 10, I have Noah Fant versus Las Vegas. And this is pretty much a weekly floor play for Noah Fant. He's usually in this 10 to 12 range. And, with no Jerry Jeudy still, then he is a threat in the red zone. So I got to respect Noah Fant as a top 10 play, but I still don't really love the upside for him on a weekly basis. And I think once Jerry Jeudy comes back, his upside will be capped even more. So I'm a little concerned long-term about Noah Fant, but still trust him as a top 12 play. A pretty decent floor play at the position. At number 11, I have Ricky Seals-Jones going up against Kansas City. And one of the reasons why I like Taylor Heineke so much isn't just Terry McLaurin, but it's also Ricky Seals-Jones. The Kansas City secondary has given up 100 yards to tight ends specifically in 3 games so far. And with Logan Thomas on IR, Ricky Seals-Jones is really showing up for the Washington football team. His connection with Taylor Heineke goes back to the practice squad, so they do have a good rapport. And I think he's a really appealing start at the tight end position, especially in daily. He's a must start if you are desperate and looking to stream a tight end. Ideally, he's still available on the waiver wire, because I think he's going to blow up in this game. I really like Ricky Seals-Jones as my top streaming tight end, and I also like Mo Alley-Cox versus Houston. They've been giving up quite a few touchdowns to the tight end position, and Mo Alley-Cox, is a big target in the end zone. He scored last week, and I think it might happen again this week. So at this point, you're really just chasing the touchdown. So that's why I prefer him over Robert Tonyan. Robert Tonyan just doesn't get that many targets. So even though he's a threat to score touchdowns, it hasn't been happening that much this year. And at this point, they're all dart throws. Same goes for Hunter Henry, who's starting to look more and more reliable, but still touchdown dependent. If he shows up again this week, I'll probably have him closer to like Noah Fant, because at that point I think you'd be able to trust Hunter Henry. But for me, I still only see him as just a top 15 guy, not a top 12 guy. And then you're really getting risky here, but Tyler Conklin, CJ Uzoma, David Njoku, Jonnu Smith, Austin Hooper, and Pat Freiermuth are some desperate dart throws at tight end. But after that point, I wouldn't go anywhere near the tight end options. They're just too risky. They don't get enough targets on a weekly basis. Now let's get into defenses, because these rankings change a lot on a week-to-week basis. I got the Colts number 1 versus Houston, and even though this is technically a good matchup for Davis Mills, I don't think that he's as good as Lamar Jackson, so I think they're going to be able to shut him down. It is a division game after all, so going to be a very contentious one from the defense, and I think the Colts have the most upside and the highest floor this week. So they're my number 1 defense, and I've got them on my roster, luckily. But I am going up against the Steelers defense, going up against Seattle, and against Geno Smith. I have no confidence in this Seattle offense. They look kind of broken, but at the end of the day, they do have DK Metcalf, but they don't have any type of run game, and I don't know if Tyler Lockett is going to be able to hit on those long passes with Geno Smith. So the only player I really trust in that game is DK Metcalf, and I think the Steelers defense is going to show up on Sunday night and be a top 5 option for sure. But I feel very confident in them. That's why I have them at number 2. And number 3 is the Cowboys at New England, and they have a chance to continue this streak of 2 interceptions in every game. And I think that it happens again against Mac Jones, a rookie quarterback, and Trayvon Diggs is looking really, really good as an all-pro corner this season. So give me the Cowboys as a top 3 play in Week 6. I really trust them. That defense is looking great. And number 4, I got the Bills at Tennessee. And even though they're facing Derrick Henry, they've been lights out against the run this year. So I think it's a downgrade for Ryan Tannehill the most, but Derrick Henry is not going to have his typical 30 carry game for 200 yards and like 4 touchdowns. So I think that the Bills are really going to show up and have a chance to blow out and shut out the Tennessee Titans. I'm starting to get convinced that the Bills are the most complete team in the NFL. So I really trust their defense as a top 5 option at number 4 this week. And at number 5, I also really like the Rams on the road at the Giants. And even though Daniel Jones is going to start, I still think that without Saquon Barkley, this team is going to struggle. I don't trust Devontae Booker, and the only thing that could ruin this ranking is garbage time, because I know that the Rams are going to lead late in this game, and if it's by a lot, then they could just let the levees break against the Giants. So that's my only concern, and that's why they carry more risk than these other guys. But I think they're a good play this week. I also think the Broncos are a pretty decent play against Las Vegas at home. But I'm a little concerned that their defense kind of doesn't really show up in the first half and struggles to stop the Raiders. But I have them here because I kind of trust their talent on the defensive side. And I also think that this matchup isn't really one that moves the needle that much. So I trust them as a top 10 play. That's why they're my number 6 defense. At number 7 is the Bengals, who have a good matchup against Detroit. And they've also been kind of showing up on defense. But I think there's some chance that they get sloppy in this game. It's a bit of a trap game for the Bengals, possibly. And that's why I don't love their upside as a fantasy defense, only at number 7, but still a starting, reliable option. And same goes for the Panthers, who have been pretty consistent this year, but they still don't have J.C. Horn. And Stephon Gilmore has yet to show up. So I only have him at number 8 versus Minnesota. And I'm kind of banking on the fact that Dalvin Cook isn't going to play in this game. So I think they're a decent top 12 option the rest of the way. but number 8 for me. I don't trust Kirk Cousins, so that's why I have them at number 8. And then I really don't trust Justin Fields. He's been barely throwing the ball at all, so I think the Packers have some upside and a decent floor this week. Same goes for the Dolphins at Jacksonville. Even though this is a road matchup in London, there's a chance that Trevor Lawrence really doesn't show up in this game. And Brian Flores is a great coach, so I think he's going to have a good game plan. So I got the Dolphins at number 10. And then a couple flyers on defense, but this is pretty much the cutoff point. I'm not going to mention any other names after this point. The Cardinals and the Browns in this game are kind of interesting. There's a chance that it's an offensive shootout, but there's also a chance that the defense really hold each other in check. So an interesting play, but I don't really want to trust anybody else after this point. It's a weird week. So ideally, you don't start a defense that gives you negative points. Sometimes it's better to start no one. But let's move on to the picks against the spread. I got 5 here that I feel rather confident in. The pick I think I'm most confident in is the Cowboys -3. They're favored in this game, obviously, and I picked them to win straight up, but only by a field goal. I think that they are going to demolish Mac Jones and the Patriots. I think their defense is really going to shut them down, and the offense, Bill Belichick is not really going to have an answer for this offense. So give me the Cowboys -3 with confidence, and then I've also got some underdogs. I love the Panthers +2.5. I've picked them to win outright over the Vikings. So give me the underdog. I really like the Panthers. So especially if Christian McCaffrey plays, then the Panthers are definitely going to win this game. But even if he doesn't, I still feel confident with Matt Rule and Sam Darnold over Mike Zimmer and Kirk Cousins. So give me the Panthers and the points +2.5. And then another underdog, according to FanDuel, is the Chargers going up against Baltimore on the road. And this is a morning game for a West Coast team, so that is a factor. But to be honest with you, I really trust Justin Herbert, and I know this is going to be a close game, so I'm really grateful that the Chargers are being given 2.5 points, not having 2.5 points taken away, because I don't think this game is decided by more than a field goal at most. But I did pick the Chargers to win outright, and that's why I love them against the spread. Give me the Chargers and the points +2.5. Another team who I picked to win outright, who is the underdog in this matchup, is the Raiders, and they're being given more than a field goal. They're being given 4.5 points on the road at Denver, and I think a lot of people are counting the Raiders out because John Gruden is not there. But I said it in this video, I really trust Derek Carr to galvanize this offense for at least one game, and I think the Raiders are going to win this game outright, or at the very least keep it within a field goal. I like them to cover the spread. Give me the Raiders +4.5 with some confidence. And then on Monday night, the Bills at Tennessee, and I really think the Bills are going to blow out Tennessee, and they're only favored by 5.5. I think they're definitely going to win by more than a touchdown. I really love the Bills to cover the spread, so give me the Bills -5.5. I think they're easily going to win by more than 10. So I like those picks. That's the Cowboys -3, the Panthers +2.5, the Chargers +2.5, the Raiders +4.5, and the Bills -5.5. I'm going to Hawaii for a week starting tomorrow, so the videos I'll be posting won't be edited in this fashion for next week, but when I get back, I promise they'll be back to normal. So I hope you can forgive me while I'm gone. I'll try and keep you as updated as possible, but when you account for the time difference, it might be a little bit slow. So I wish you good luck this week. I hope we all win, and my name is Adam Riancho, and thank you for watching Nice and Blunt.